Before we begin, ensure your monitoring systems are active. Subscribe to Project Echo to receive access to further suppressed anomalies, the ones humanity was never meant to uncover. This archive concerns Operation Deep Wake, a naval anomaly event recorded under classification level K4. The details you are about to hear were concealed for more than 4 decades. At approximately 3:11 a.m., the Pacific silence broke with a sonar return unlike anything previously cataloged. Depth, 11,400 meters. Displacement, immeasurable. Origin, identified as non-geological. Personnel reported a mass beneath the carrier, enormous, symmetrical, and structurally impossible. It did not drift. It did not rise or fall. It waited. The initial readings suggested internal cavities large enough to rival industrial structures. No marine organism has ever demonstrated such architecture. When the sonar pulse was repeated, the anomaly responded. Its frequency shifted. Its echo pattern altered. Not randomly, but deliberately. The technicians stated that the sound resembled harmonics, not natural, not environmental. Something closer to a voice. Following the second pulse, communication with the lower deck sensors became unstable. The anomaly began to emit a sequence of tones, slow, measured, almost ritualistic in rhythm. Crew members reported a physical sensation behind the ribs, synchronized with each pulse, as if something in the deep intended to be felt, not merely detected. Attempts to classify the object failed. The official designation on record, structure of unknown biological or artificial origin. A thermal reading taken shortly after showed faint heat signatures, not enough to suggest metabolism, just enough to imply movement or awareness. Witnesses described the ocean surface beginning to rise in unnatural patterns, not waves, displacement, as if something vast shifted its weight far below. The final incident report from the carrier ends abruptly. The last logged message. It's responding to us. Within hours, the anomaly ceased all movement. The readings froze. The ocean returned to baseline. The silence that followed was interpreted as dormancy. It was a mistake. Operation Deep Wake proceeded with a full scientific analysis. The team assigned Marine Acoustic Pathophysiology Division, under Dr. Elias Warren. Warren described the recovered audio sample as a bioacoustic signature exceeding marine registers. His tone was clinical, but the underlying implication was clear. Nothing in recorded biology should sound like this. According to Warren, the harmonics demonstrated structure, not noise, not chaos. Structure, the foundation of communication. Preliminary models suggested syntax like organization. The anomaly may not have been producing sound. It may have been composing it. A buoy retrieved after the encounter displayed significant deformation. Not crushing, not tearing. Precision bending, as if grasped by something capable of applying controlled force. Warren noted that no known predator, no known organism could exert such manipulation at abyssal pressure. Something else was at work. More concerning was the anomaly's ability to mimic the hydrophone frequencies. When the research team changed their pulse intervals, the anomaly mirrored them back. This pattern repeated 3 times before the anomaly abruptly ceased response, leading Warren to conclude that the contact was not accidental. In his personal notes, Warren wrote, "We are not mapping it. It is mapping us." This line was omitted from the official report. Another entry, Hafirest, reads, "The size is not anatomically viable. It should not be alive, unless something else is moving it." The implications were dismissed as stress-induced error, but Warren insisted the anomaly demonstrated intent. Intent, he argued, is the foundation of intelligence. His last decipherable notebook page contains a single sentence, written with pressure strong enough to tear the paper beneath. "Whatever sleeps under the Pacific has begun to wake." Shortly after this entry, Communication from the naval black site ceased for 17 hours. All transmissions were flagged as corrupted. Sensor arrays recorded no marine traffic and no seismic activity. Just an unbroken, crushing silence. When the systems finally resumed, the anomaly's signal had changed. Not weakened, transformed. What had previously resembled a harmonic pulse now resembled something else entirely. A pattern of rising and falling tones that mirrored human speech registers. Warren attempted translation protocols. The results were inconclusive but deeply unsettling. He noted repeating intervals suggestive of a phrase. A message? Something that tried to imitate language but lacked the anatomical capacity to speak it. In the final log of the analysis section, Warren wrote, "We believed we found a creature. I am no longer certain it is singular." He described the tonal shifts as layered, multiple voices overlapping in impossible synchronization, a chorus, a structure that echoed itself. Dr. Warren recommended immediate suspension of all acoustic probing. His request was denied. 3 hours later, the anomaly emitted a sustained low-frequency pulse that triggered pressure alarms across the carrier's hull. Several compartments reported metallic trembling inconsistent with wave conditions. This pulse, later termed the deep wake tone, would become the basis of the escalation that followed. The carrier's official report ends with a brief final transmission. The sound feels closer. Nothing further was recorded for 12 minutes. The blackout is unexplained. When data resumed, the anomaly was gone. The ocean was empty. But the sonar did not return to baseline. Something else remained in the water. Something smaller. Something faster. Something moving upward. And whatever it was moving toward the surface. This concludes the initial phase of Operation Deep Wake. The escalation event began the moment the anomaly disappeared from sonar and reappeared inside the carrier's acoustic blind zone. Prepare to continue to the next segment. The following analysis contains classified material on organismal response, hull resonance events, and the phenomenon termed vocal mimicry. Proceed only if you are certain. Deep wake remains one of the most dangerous acoustic anomalies ever documented. When the anomaly vanished from sonar, the research team initially assumed it had descended deeper. That assumption lasted exactly 9 seconds until the hydrophones began capturing something else. Something faster. Something approaching. The first signal resembled an echo, but not of the ship. It mirrored the carrier's own acoustic signature, as if something beneath the surface was imitating its hull vibrations with unnatural precision. At 3:27, the tone shifted. The frequency stabilized into a narrow band that technicians described as breathing heard through steel. 3 pulses per second. Measured. Intentional. Crew members near the lower decks reported a faint tremor under their feet, rhythmic and slow. Not the ocean. Not the engine. Something external. At 3:32, hull sensors recorded a pressure anomaly. The ship had not been struck, but something was pressing against it, gently, repeatedly as though feeling its shape. A later analysis determined the pressure points resembled the spacing of fingers. Fingers nearly 3 meters apart. The official record does not explain how something with such dimensions could make contact without breaching the hull. The unofficial notes describe the event with a single sentence. It touched the ship. Moments later, the carrier's lighting systems flickered. Power did not fail. Instead, light cycles synchronized with the pulses coming from the deep. Each flicker matched the anomaly's resonance exactly. Below deck, 2 crewmen described hearing voices through the ventilation system. Not words, shapes of sound. An imitation of speech. Something trying to replicate the rhythm of language without understanding it. The men disagreed on what they heard, but both insisted the voices were attempting to mimic familiar tones, as if practicing. At 3:41, the anomaly resurfaced on sonar. but its profile had changed. The mass was no longer singular. It had fragmented into multiple signatures. Dozens at first, then hundreds. The readings formed a halo around the ship, moving in formation, coordinated but silent. These signatures were not biological organisms. The patterns were too uniform, too synchronized. They resembled echoes, not from the ship, but from something deeper beneath them. Echoes of a larger presence. The technicians attempted to map the formation. The result was dismissed as equipment malfunction. The pattern formed the rough outline of the original mass, but inverted, as though the creature's echo had detached from its body and risen independently. The official name given to this event was acoustic shedding. The unofficial term used in Warren's notebook was simpler. It split. At 3:48, the carrier's main sonar array recorded a pulse, unlike the earlier ones. This one had a rising harmonic. It built slowly, like a breath being drawn in. Then, abruptly, the harmonic collapsed into a single, sharp tone that rattled instruments and triggered hull alarms across 3 decks. Witnesses described the sensation as a pressure drop inside the skull, a feeling of being listened to. At 3:49, a burst of higher frequency pulses followed. Not random, sequential. Measured, repeated 3 times. Warren described the sequence as a message with no mouth. He insisted the anomaly was no longer reacting to sonar, it was reacting to the presence of the ship itself. Crew near the waterline reported seeing circular disturbances along the surface. Perfect rings expanding outward, evenly spaced, as if something far below was exhaling. By 3:52, the formation surrounding the carrier tightened. The signatures moved closer, compressing toward the hull. The ship vibrated under the rhythmic pressure. The main hydrophone captured a low, resonant hum, louder than before. Not a call, not a warning. Something deeper, something ancient. The hum stabilized at a frequency later identified as incompatible with organic vocal structures. The implication was clear. Whatever produced this sound did not have organs adapted for communication, yet communicated anyway. At 3:55, the anomaly's tone briefly broke into a higher pitch. Analysts later determined that the pitch shift matched patterns found in human distress calls. But this resemblance was superficial. The structure had no emotional content. It mimicked distress, the way a mirror mimics motion. The carrier initiated silent running protocol, reducing onboard sound to minimum levels. The anomaly responded instantly. Its pulses weakened. Its signatures drifted outward. A retreat, temporary, but deliberate. This was the first confirmation that the anomaly reacted to sound as presence. Reducing noise equaled reducing attention. The creature, or whatever force lay beneath it, lost interest. But at 4:03, everything changed. A second mass appeared on sonar, deeper than the first. Larger. The system identified it simply as unknown no-return structure. This mass emitted no harmonics, no pulses. It existed only as an absence, a void that displaced water without revealing its boundaries. Warren's later analysis described it as a shadow cast by something unfathomably large. The first anomaly responded immediately. Its fragmented signatures converged. The halo collapsed into a single cluster. The hum intensified. The deep mass remained motionless, silent, waiting. The carrier's engines began to vibrate without mechanical cause. Readings suggested external resonance. Something was forcing the ship's metal to sing. Crew reported feeling the vibration in their bones. A few described their vision bending around the edges, as if the air itself were warping. At 4:05, the anomaly expelled a pulse of tremendous amplitude. Data overload forced half the equipment offline. But the sensors that survived captured something unprecedented, A second pulse answering the first rose from the deeper mass. Not identical, not harmonic, complementary, like two parts of a structure communicating in a language no human has ever heard. This interaction continued for an estimated 38 seconds. During this time, the ship drifted off course without propulsion. The ocean currents shifted against their natural direction. Warren's final note on this segment states, "We recorded a dialogue. Between what and what else, I don't know." At 4:06, the deeper mass withdrew. Its signature dissolved into the trench below. The first anomaly followed, disappearing at 11,500 meters. Then the ocean fell silent. Not normal silence. Total silence. The kind of silence that swallows sound rather than lacks it. The hull stopped vibrating. Instruments stabilized. For a moment, the carrier floated in absolute stillness. This moment marked the end of the escalation and the beginning of the containment failure. The research division believed the anomaly had returned to dormancy, but Warren disagreed. His final line from this phase reads, "It isn't sleeping, it is listening." Within hours, the consequences of that mistake would surface across hundreds of nautical miles. Operation Deep Wake shifted from analysis to survival. The hours following the escalation were marked by a quiet the crew later described as unnatural, not peaceful, not calm, a silence with weight, a silence that implied observation. At 9:14, hydrophones detected the first irregularity. A faint clicking pattern rising from the trench, too soft to classify, too structured to ignore. Warren believed the clicks were residual, an echo of the earlier dialogue. But the timing was too precise. Each click arrived exactly 40 seconds apart, as though measured. By the seventh click, the frequency had risen. What began as background interference had sharpened into recognizable cadence. Something had changed. Crew members on deck reported a sensation beneath their feet. Not vibration, not movement. A presence, the impression of being directly above something vast. At 9:18, the ocean surface began to deform. Not with waves, with depressions. Circular indentations forming and vanishing in perfect sequence, as if something below was pushing the water upward and downward in controlled intervals. The patterns matched the rhythm of the clicks. A junior officer described it this way: "The ocean was breathing under us." Minutes later, the anomaly returned to sonar. But it was no longer a single mass, nor a dispersed halo. It appeared as three separate structures, arranged at equidistant points around the carrier. Warren identified the pattern, a triangulation, a method of mapping. Not the terrain, the ship. At 9:26, the carrier's depth sensors failed. All readings collapsed to zero, indicating that the ocean beneath them had become bottomless. This was impossible, but the equipment did not malfunction. The water below the carrier no longer reflected sonar pulses. It absorbed them. What emerged next became the centerpiece of the Deep Wake secrecy mandate. At 9:31, a low-frequency pulse rose from the trench, lifting a column of water nearly 4 meters high without any mechanical force. The rising column held its shape still, unmoving as though sculpted from liquid steel. The crew stared at it in silence, realizing something was inside the water. A shape, a silhouette, a mass trying to break the surface. Before the column collapsed, the carrier received the final signal. A tone, long, sustained, deliberate, not harmonic, not mimicked, something new. Warren identified it as a singular message. His interpretation was simple. It learned. After the pulse faded, the water fell unnaturally fast, as though something immense released its hold on it. The anomaly vanished once more, but this time, sonar could not track it. Not because it fled, but because it no longer emitted sound. From that moment onward, the anomaly existed only in silence. The absence of a signature created unprecedented panic. An entity that size should not be able to disappear. Every known law of marine acoustics depended on presence, on sound. But this creature no longer reflected anything. The final entry from Warren's division states, "When something stops making sound, it does not mean it is gone. It means it is adapted to avoid detection." By midday, civilian vessels across the Pacific reported strange disturbances, echoes that mirrored their engines. Pulses felt through the hull, residual harmonics with no identifiable source. Fishermen in multiple regions described hearing singing beneath the boat. Not melodic, not human. A slow, deliberate pattern rising from the deep. The reports spanned thousands of nautical miles, far more than any single organism could travel in that time. This led Warren to a disturbing conclusion. The anomaly was not a creature, but a structure, a network, a collection of entities acting as one. Satellite imaging later confirmed subtle distortions across the Pacific Basin, consistent with large-scale movement beneath the surface. The patterns resembled migration routes, but no species on Earth migrates at abyssal depth. Deep Wake shifted into emergency mode. The directive issued: cease all acoustic contact. Do not probe. Do not respond. Do not acknowledge the pulses. The reasoning was chilling. The creature, or collective, reacted to attention. The less the world listened, the less it approached. But at 1403, every remaining hydrophone received the same single pulse. Unified, massive. Global monitors detected it from Japan to Hawaii. This was the last confirmed signal from the anomaly. The tone carried no previous signatures, no imitation, no mimicry, no layered structure. It was a type of sound no one had ever recorded before, a descending frequency that created an after-sensation in the bones, as though the body continued to vibrate after the audio ended. Warren described it as a farewell or a promise. Then, without warning, the Pacific Basin fell silent, permanently. Not a natural silence, a void, a suppression. Marine life fled entire regions. Migration patterns broke. Sonar arrays recorded nothing but flat noise, as though the ocean floor had become a perfect acoustic absorber. Within weeks, Deep Wake was shut down. All personnel reassigned. All records erased. The event labeled as seismic instability. The public explanation: tectonic shift. But the internal report, sealed under Operation Echo, contradicts every official statement. It states that the anomaly is not gone. It has simply moved deeper into a region of the Pacific where humanity does not and cannot observe. The final page of the classified file contains only one sentence, handwritten in Warren's deteriorating scrawl. We did not discover it. It discovered us. The Pacific remains the most unexplored region of Earth. 90% of its depth remains unmapped. The anomaly could exist anywhere within that darkness. A follow-up directive issued 20 years later warns naval divisions that any deep ocean harmonic resembling the Deep Wake tone must be reported immediately. Not because the creature is returning, but because the harmonics may represent fragments of a larger signal. A signal traveling upward, toward the surface. And if it reaches us again, the operation notes make one thing clear. The next pulse will not be a message. It will be an arrival.